Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Deadline Club's webinar From Resignations to Reinvention. Substack, Journalism's New Frontier. Is it a question or a statement? We will find out tonight. I'm Jessica Siegel. I am the events chair of the Deadline Club, and we are the largest chapter of the National Society of Professional Journalists. Our mission is to promote values, ethics, training, and community. We also, very important today, more so than ever, advocate for the First Amendment. In club news, just for a moment, a little break, we've just announced the finalists to the extremely prestigious, if we don't mind us saying so ourselves, Rubin Awards, and the awards ceremony at the Harvard Club is May 15th. Check it all out at our website, deadlineclub.org, and you can find out what is really the best, what we think the best journalism is in the country. We have 3 finalists for each category, and we will find out who wins on May 15th. And just before we get going to introducing, in tech news, we have Robert Anthony, who is an executive associate and a former president of the Deadline Club. He is running the show here and has done the tech and the graphics. He is also a tech and travel journalist, also with his own Substack called The Paper PC. And now to introduce our extremely illustrious moderator and organizer of this panel, the extraordinary David Andelman, and I am not using that as not hyperbole. He created the Substack Andelman Unleashed, and there he is in his very posh den. I don't know where that is, in Pennsylvania. And he has reported from 90 plus countries. He's written 5 books. He is, okay, this is the special one, a Chevalier du Légion d'honneur. For his reporting in Paris and in France over a 50-year period. He was twice awarded the Deadline Club Award for the best opinion writing for his CNN commentaries and Reuters columns. This is very competitive. Okay, I hope you're not, David, I see you blushing. Okay, but you shouldn't because you deserve it all. He has served as editor and publisher of the World Policy Journal, executive editor of Forbes, a domestic and foreign correspondent for the New York Times, and CBS News Paris correspondent. With our club and in leadership roles, he's been the former president of the Overseas Press Club and the Silurians Press Club. And let me say this panel is his baby. We are extremely thrilled that he has organized it. He has invited the speakers. He is running the show. So David, take it away.
And none of this would be possible without Jess and, of course, Robert. My goodness, my technology for an 80-year-old is sometimes things. So we're very happy.
David, you're killing it. And I didn't even know you were 80. I thought you were 50.
Oh, that's so kind. You're very sweet. That's very nice. I love your makeup, by the way.
Oh, thank you. No, I left during our tech break. I was like, I got to do the makeup. It makes a huge difference. But David, this is about Substack and what journalists are going to do in a world where supposedly they're censoring on Facebook and everywhere else. So it's your baby now.
And thanks, of course, to the Deadline Club for sponsoring this. We're privileged to be the newest board member this year. And a privilege to welcome everyone to this webinar, discussion, or whatever you want to call, an introduction to the wonderful world of Substack. And we have 2 remarkable Substack people joining us. Richard Galant, executive producer of Now It's History on Substack, and a senior fellow at the New America Foundation. Richard was the founding editor and leader of CNN Opinion for the past 15 plus years, and my boss when I was a columnist for CNN Opinion before CNN put a stake through the heart of the whole idea. But anyway, there we are. Earlier in his career, he served as managing editor of Newsday and New York Newsday, where he led 2 Pulitzer Prize-winning teams. And we have Claire Atkinson, creator of Media Mix on Substack and a veteran journalist at NBC, even the New York Post, but especially who is deeply into the authorship of what will be the definitive biography of Rupert Murdoch. Really something to wait eagerly for. So as for myself, I've been a journalist for somewhere in the vicinity of 60 years. You don't need to go through that whole thing because I was eminently introduced by Jess. I arrived at Substack just as Elon Musk put a stake through my Twitter page when it became X, and I've never looked back. So I think we should start off with, perhaps in chronological order of entry, a bit about each of your experience on Substack and what you've learned about its strengths and weaknesses and what you're looking to accomplish. So, Claire, you were the first chronologically, I think, of all of us on Substack. So why don't you go?
Yeah, so I'd interviewed Hamish McKenzie, who was the co-founder when I was at NBC. He was, he'd already launched it. The big Substacks then were Cynicism and the Lenny Letter. And I was very intrigued. I wasn't ready to give up my salary at NBC News at that time. But I kept it in the back of my mind, and I saw more and more people joining and launching newsletters, and I started reading more and more. And then I spent about 3 years at Business Insider, decided that I wanted to live a more free lifestyle, and I wanted to live remotely and be wherever I wanted to be. And then, I launched the Media Mix, and for me, the purpose was just to try it out. It wasn't to replace a salary. It was really to build an audience for myself. And, anybody who's written a book knows you need to build some kind of an audience before it comes out. So that was really what was in my mind. I've written about every corner of the media, from marketing. I was at Advertising Age. I was at Media Week in the UK. I wrote for Variety and Hollywood Reporter. I wrote for Broadcasting and Cable. I'd written for pretty much every trade industry magazine that covered the media and marketing space. And so when I launched it, I wanted to cover stories that really just interested me and things that I had done before. And, I guess what I have learned is that more niche is better. But I am happy to write everything from, what's happening at the Cannes Film Festival to, what's going on with tariffs on Madison Avenue, and, what's going on with Trump and the news media, and really keep it broad. And, if I wanted to make tons of money, I would be out there breaking news every day. And I think I could do that and make more money. But for now, in this moment, the real plan is to be the authority on Rupert Murdoch and everything going on in his organization. And also, just continue to build ways of trying to expand it. And, you probably know, David, that it's pretty easy to be adding subscribers every day. Every time I go on X or I post something, I have right next to my name, subscribe to the Media Mix, and I get 1 or 2 every time I tweet. So, what I'm finding is that there's a really incredible multiplier effect with Substack. And I don't know how other newsletter platforms work. Obviously a couple of people have gone to Ghost, and there's others out there, but I feel like I'm part of a new exciting startup that is really getting behind new authors in a big way. I'm part of a bestseller support group, so I get messages from Substack asking if I need help on anything. The Washington contingent Substack's about to have a big event for the Washington Correspondents Association weekend. And we're seeing more of those kind of in-person ways where we can connect with other Substacks writers and really try to learn what each other is doing and what's working and what isn't. And thankfully, I have you and I go back and forth about, hey, does this work? What are you seeing here? How do we figure out ways to work with other Substack writers? And so there is a community, and I really kind of, I find that so helpful, just being able to reach out to other people on Substack and ask, how do I do this?
It is, that Substack community is very important. Rich, what's your experience been? Because you're the most recent arrival, I think.
Yeah, thanks, David. And it's a pleasure to join you for this conversation. I started Now It's History, a Substack newsletter and podcast, last August when I left CNN after 15 years running the CNN opinion section. And in the course of that time, we edited David, and we were proud to publish his column, which won an award for us from the Deadline Club. But we published thousands of pieces of political commentary over that time. And I found that the pieces that really resonated with me were the ones about history, and the ones that applied history as a lens through which we could better understand what was happening now. So when I left CNN, I adopted that focus now it's history. And I've posted 60 pieces in the past 8 months. And my work is being read in 49 states. And if anybody on this call is from Wyoming, please subscribe, because that will get me to all 50, and 36 countries. And that's one of the nice things about Substack. You get a lot of data about your audience, and it's very easy to access. But in the past few months, I've explored things like the story of how the presidency of John Adams created some of the most repressive laws in U.S. history, including the Alien Enemies Act, which is the one that the Trump administration is using to send people to that prison in El Salvador. And I looked into how President Andrew Jackson defied the U.S. Supreme Court on his treatment of the Cherokees, who were forced to march west on the Trail of Tears. And I learned more than I ever wanted to know about the Tariff of Abominations of 1828 and the Hawley-Smoot Tariff of 1930, which are the best comparisons to what's happening right now with the Trump tariffs. And I've written about Elon Musk and Amy Coney Barrett, and done podcasts on the true life story of John Hancock, who had that famous signature on the Declaration of Independence, and on a new book about a massive British intelligence operation that was based at Rockefeller Center, which is the place where the idea of James Bond came to be. So it's been a tremendous amount of fun to explore. And what do I think of Substack overall? It's a very welcoming and versatile platform, as Claire made clear. And I can think of, just kind of enumerating some pros and cons, if they might be helpful to the audience. You get total freedom to decide what to write and when to write it, and whether you want to produce it in the form of text, audio, or video. You don't have to get anybody's approval to post anything. The community is very supportive. Other Substackers help get you off the ground. You have that direct connection to readers, so you get their feedback, and it's very encouraging when people like what you publish. It's an intuitive content management system. It's much easier than most of the CMSs I've seen in professional media. You control everything. You pick the pictures, you write the headline, you decide the length of the story, you do the subheads. You can use stock photos, graphics, AI-generated photos. One tip is that Wikimedia Images is a great source of photos, particularly historic photos, but also some up-to-date ones. And then, of course, there's the option, which I haven't exercised yet, of offering paid subscriptions. I think David could talk about that very helpfully. A lot of people advise people to first build an audience before going paid. And the final pro is that you can build you own your own subscriber list, and you can take it elsewhere if you decide to go on another platform. What are the cons? You have to build your own audience, and it takes a long, long time, especially if you're not a major figure in the media. Someone like Jim Acosta, who can take his following with him to Substack. You don't have the legal umbrella of protection that you have with a major media company. So you have to think about that and look into insurance options. You don't have an editor, and you have to find one. I'm lucky to be married to Eileen Jacobson, who's a terrific journalist and is my editor. I'm curious, David and Claire, what you do in terms of editing. Another con is there's so much content that if you don't have a particular niche, it will be very hard to attract readers. And it's easy to get overlooked. And also, I find one of the last thing I'll mention is just figuring out the right publication frequency is tricky. Some people publish twice a day, other people once a month. I've kind of settled on once to twice a week, but I'm curious what people think about what's the best frequency.
Right. Okay. So lots to go through. And I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to do at the end, so as not to bore everybody here right now with this. but it takes you through how I actually launched my Substack, which is basically in stages. I started with, I just decided it'd be fun to chronicle the French election 7 years ago when Macron first became one as president. So I did that. Every week I had a new thing on the French election. Then I decided, well, French election is interesting. How about every other election in the world? So I decided I was going to examine every election in the world every year. And I do that even to this day. And for the last 3 years, I have chronicled every election everywhere in the world. And then I said, well, that's fairly limiting, because what you really want to know is what's the context of all of that is. So what's going on outside of America? And the one thing I discovered is that, and again, this is the thing about a niche. You really have to choose a niche that you think nobody else is really filling, that you can really, with your expertise and your chops, can fill that niche. And I decided my niche was really the world's media. So I began looking at the world media. Well, I read Le Monde and the Telegraph in London and various other places around the world. But methodologically, I began looking at and examining every week what was the rest of the world saying about America and what was it saying about them. And you'd be amazed at some of the things you discover about how what our image is around the world and what their image of themselves is around the world. It's very, very interesting. And that is where I really think I began to build an audience. So I still do all of those basic things originally, but I began expanding out and embracing different niches and different continents. So I have nearly subscribers. I really do literally have subscribers on every continent. Not sure about Antarctica. I'm not sure if we have anybody here from Antarctica. That may be why I want to hold it. I would like to fill with someone from Antarctica as a subscriber. But anyway, so that's what I've done. As far as paid versus unpaid, I did exactly what Rich thought. Originally, I started out, I said, I want to get to 1,000 subscribers and then I'll start. And I said, oh, sorry, no. I don't want to really turn anybody off by making myself pay. So I said, well, but 2,000. Finally, it got to 3,000 subscribers, and I said, all right, I'm going paid. But I give the paid something extra, but not everything. Everybody gets basically my big weekly blast on, I call it the week that was. And that's basically the media around the world. At the end, I give them a cartoon gallery. And especially I've created this weekly, I call it a Zoomversation on Fridays at 1 p.m. And I've gotten quite a lot of take-ups for that. So we have a nice conversation with any of our paid subscribers who want to log on. And I give them a free inscribed copy of my last book, A Red Line in the Sand, which some people seem to enjoy. So that's basically what I've done. I've gone from, I don't know what Rich and Claire is. I'm happy to divulge my numbers. I've got about a little over 5,600 subscribers right now, of whom 87 are paid. I've got one each yesterday and today, new paid, which is always nice. In terms of the numbers of unpaid, it really is a huge roller coaster. Yesterday, I got 34 new unpaid subscribers. Today, I've gotten 15 already. Some of these, I suspect, may be people who've noticed this to the Deadline Club and signed on, but it's really very, very difficult to find out how you find these people and how they find you, rather. And I think that's one of the my principal concerns, is that you can't really do that on Substack. The other thing, and I love Substack for so many reasons, but one issue that I find is a little rankling. They really don't help you out unless you're really bringing in paid money. And they love people who have, like Heather Cox Richardson has over 1 million paid subscribers at $5 a month, which is pretty extraordinary. Obviously, there aren't very many like that, but they do like people who generate a lot of money, and those people they really do give a lot of attention to. So, but otherwise, so you're very much on your own in that respect. Still, it's an entrepreneurial operation, and I love being an entrepreneur. So there we are. Claire, Rich, any other thoughts on that? Eventually we'll open it up to questions, but how are we doing on time? Okay, we got a little more time to talk among ourselves.
But David, I wanted to talk about why people read Substacks. And I think it's because so many of us read on our phones, right? Or we read on our laptops. And I know when I open a Substack, I'm just going to get text, and there's no pop-ups, there's no advertising. I can just relax into what I'm reading. And pretty much most other outlets, there's pop-ups, there's logins where, I paid for my New York Times, but I still have to log in again, or, the same for the Wall Street Journal. And then you have to kind of navigate and find, the content and where is it going to be. And I think people like that connection with a writer that they know. And I think they like the feeling of it being a relaxing read, even if the topics are stressful, right? I feel people are obsessed with reading about what's happening with Trump right now. And so the political Substacks are doing incredibly well. And I think there's that feeling in the ether that corporate media, we've seen them kind of toadying to Trump, and that Substack is a more pure environment, untainted by, lawsuits from Donald Trump or whatever. And so, I think people enjoy coming because it's a less cluttered environment. For people who are wondering, how the hell can I make any money doing this? That, like you said, there are entrepreneurial ways of trying to figure this out. I have a partnership with a company who are basically like a newswire for corporate press releases, and they put press releases on my site, and they pay me to do that. And so I point to them at the end of the stories, and that earns me a little bit of money. And in terms of like when I do free and when I do paid, what I learned from a source at Politico was that you ungate the big scoops and you gate the everyday, writing, which is kind of counterintuitive. I feel a little bit like a musician who just wants my music listened to. I want people to read my stuff. That's the primary goal of writing, is that other people read it and respond to it. And so I'm reluctant to put the gate on a lot of things, but, I'm learning as we go along, like how to give something of substance, but then gate, the extra. And so I think, we're also learning, like, what are the best ways to do that? And, my free or paid decision just depends on how I feel on the day that I write it.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me respond to a couple of things there. First of all, what I didn't mention was notes. Substack notes, I find just an extraordinary, really extraordinary, for getting your ideas across and for becoming. This is basically Substack notes has replaced X for me. Because every time I see something interesting, I link to it and I put a comment about, usually a snarky comment, on notes. And people do notice this. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary, the people who react to this. And I do get a lot of subscribers, I think, through notes. And I think that's very important. This kind of cross-fertilization is also very important. People who will, I tell everybody, by the way, I look at people who follow me, because a lot more people will follow you. And a lot more people will follow you necessarily than will necessarily subscribe to you. So every time I see someone following me, I send them a note and say, hey, why don't you subscribe to me for free? And I'll do the same for you. Now, I probably got a couple of thousand people I've subscribed to now, but I don't know. I don't much care. But I have really built my subscription list that way. I think that's very useful. So
one other thing I just throw in is there's a powerful sort of recommendation engine in Substack, which is that when you create a Substack, you can recommend other Substacks. And when people subscribe to you, they have the option to automatically subscribe to everyone you recommend. And if you develop a sort of symbiotic relationship with other Substackers, they will recommend you. And, if somebody really gets a big surge in traffic, it could benefit your Substack.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I think that's useful is to make it, you talked about, Claire, about text and so on. There are some people who do just text, and Claire, Heather Cox Richardson, bless her soul. I mean, I have to tell you, the one time she mentioned me in a footnote, not just a link in a footnote, I got 800 new subscribers that weekend, which she has over 1 million paid. So, I mean, it was like I couldn't believe it. It was like a constant revolving new subscribers anyway. But hers is all text. But I find that, and in my years in magazines, of course, Policy Journal and Forbes and whatever, that you really do need graphics and you need pictures to break things up. And I think that the more you can do like that, it really connects people with what you're writing. And I think that's very important. So I try to look for that sort of a thing. Claire and Rich, do you also do that? How do you feel about visuals?
I think it's crucial.
Yeah. And videos.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, it's hard to find the pictures. And so I'm glad to get some tips from Richard about how to do that. I always try to find a visual from YouTube so that when, you know, when you come to the story, maybe you're going to play a piece of video that relates to the story that I'm writing. And I think that makes it like a little bit more interactive. But that's, yeah, I mean, the arrival of video on Substack is something we should talk about because I think that's pretty interesting. Tonight, Substack's having a big live event with Jim Acosta that I'm seeing in my inbox right now. And so I think what we're going to see is Substack using its biggest names to, you know, promote events. They're doing these little events with folks in New York and folks in DC. And I think we're going to see more of Substack exploring things like that.
We've got a couple of interesting questions. Barbara Whitaker asked whether Substack operates within WordPress. I don't really know what WordPress is. So if either of you two can help us on that, we can answer Barbara's question. Rich, you know?
Yeah, I haven't heard of any connection. I think just off the top of my head, I think Substack wants you to use their system for posting, but again, it's an easy one to learn, and you know,
Yeah.
I'm happy to help people if they run into roadblocks, but it's very
You know,
intuitive.
the biggest problem with it is that it's not that flexible. I mean, you can't really do a lot of design stuff. For instance, they insist on putting two spaces between paragraphs. If you might not necessarily want that. And the pictures very often will show up full size rather than being able to shrink them. It's very I wish I could get to talk to a Substack programmer to tell them some of these things that just don't work all that well. I'd like to take some questions from our audience. John Jacobs, are you out there and want to talk? You have a question I think you wanted to ask. Unmute yourself and ask it.
Yeah, yes. I had started a blog on Facebook. I don't usually call it a blog since that's brands someone usually as from 15, 20 years ago. But one advantage they have is the sharing tools is very easy, you know, as any social media platform, and make it effortless for people to share content. So you're into second and third degree friends of friends of friends. And I'm concerned that how the Substack sharing tools compare with what's available on social media platforms, because if followers have to, for example, email a content link to somebody else to get them to see it. I'm afraid nobody's ever going to do that because it's so much more effort than just clicking a share button.
So when you publish something on Substack, a screen pops up, you know, basically telling you to get the word out, and it gives you, you know, with one click, you could post on Twitter, you could post on LinkedIn, you could post on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if they're doing Blue Sky. I've seen that on occasion, but the Substack does have sharing tools.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that also it's very useful to know that what you really need to do is you need to get the knowledge that you're there and you're doing things out to everybody wherever you are. So, for instance, I put in the signature of my every email, I have a link to my Substack page. In the signature of everything I do. So on my business card, for instance, on the back of it, I can maybe show it to you. Let's see. Yes. I have that's my Chevalier Legion of Honor on one side. On the other side is a link goes directly to my Substack sign up page. And people will I'll give it to them and they'll take out their phone and they'll sign up. And that's just a little tip. But you'll find all of these things. Sometimes you'll stumble across them on your own. Sometimes you'll stumble across them when people tell you about them. So I'm telling you about them at any rate. John, thank you. Edie, you have Edie, I'm sorry, Subarubia. Did I pronounce that correctly? Edie, are you there?
Yes, I'm
Edie?
here. I'm here. Hi. Um, so I was wondering, we're talking a little bit about imagery, but I was thinking a little bit going bigger, like, I don't know if you all have any suggestions for either for design tools. I've seen vague things about different design tools or skins or whatnot, or if you just have advice on what you do to make your site look, more aesthetically unique. Because I know Substack only has like, I guess maybe 3 or 4 templates. And particularly, my idea of what I want to do is going to be about aesthetics. So I feel like I ought to be aesthetical, um, in order to look the part, be the part.
Claire, do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm not
I
very
think you
I'm not very technical either. I did manage to make my pages peach and change the color of the pages to see if that worked. You can do cream or plain white, but I haven't really spent time really on that. I mean, I have a graphic, the media mix with a specific purple color. But I have seen Substacks that do give advice on that topic. So I'll see if I can dig it out for you.
Thank you.
One
Okay.
thing that's easy to do is to have a custom logo to import that. But I think there aren't a huge number of options.
I did that. There are two kinds of logos you can have. You can have a little square one, or you can have a longer one that's for your masthead at the top of every post that you do. So I created both. I had actually a wonderful designer who I've known for years, and she created a little square one. And she took a dog's leash and 'cause unleashed, right? And it's unfastened at one end. There's a long leash stretched out. And I've used it ever since, and people kind of like it. I think they've gotten used to knowing it, and they see it everywhere. You'll see it if I go on my video, you'll see it there. There's sort of a little bit of it there on my video. So
Cute.
screensaver, whatever you would call it. So
And I do like your cartoons, David. They're always amusing and original.
cartoons, I have an arrangement with Cartooning for Peace in Paris. They are an amazing organization. Let me give them a little plug. They have over 350 cartoonists from all over the world, literally on every continent. And they're amazingly inventive. So they send me a little a gallery each week of some things that they think I might be interested in, the particular subject matter. So I create a gallery of those at the end. But that's another thing I do. I did that originally for everybody, and I said, maybe that'll be a way of attracting some people. To paid. So now it goes in the paid portion of the bottom of my Substack. At the bottom of my Substack, I have at the end of the regular session, I say, now here's what you would have if you're going to if you're going to be a paid subscriber. And I'll tell them very briefly about a little interesting feature, a fun feature that's going to be at the end. And then following that, the cartoons. And people seem to love the cartoons. So anyway, that's another possibility. To find an interesting little niche like that you can throw at people.
Thank you.
Let's see. What else do we have? Now, let's see. Yeah, WordPress, we did that. Jacob, Louise, copyright protection. Oh, that's very interesting. Go ahead, Louise. You want to ask about that?
Yes, I think I said it. Hi, thanks for doing this. So what is the copyright protection if we each own our own copyright? What happens in terms of appropriation? Thievery, I call it.
Here's my deal about copyright. If someone wants to steal something I've written, bravo. The more visibility I can get from my ideas, the happier I am. I'd love for them to give me credit for it and to link back and so on. But
No,
unless,
I'm talking about thievery where there's no.
no, I understand. But thievery can also be that can be interesting. I mean, at least my ideas are getting out there. Someone wants to use my idea. I think that's great. And if I see that happening, then I might very well get back to them and say, that was my idea first, and so on, and then maybe embarrass them a little bit, but at least I can get credit for it. Rich, what do you feel? What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, I haven't thought a lot about that. I believe every post says at the bottom that the copyright owner is you, the publisher of your own Substack. But I haven't really seen that as a problem. The thing I worry about on the other side is making sure that I give full credit to places that I will quote, because I don't want to, inadvertently get into any copyright issues.
Well, I do that also, just as a professional journalist. I like to give credit to other journalists. There's no doubt, or other writers. There's no question about that. Also, the one thing I don't do, though, is I will do it occasionally, but not very often. I don't link back. Maybe I should do it more. But when I was at Forbes, Forbes.com, I was executive editor at Forbes.com for a while. They had this thing about never linking off of your site. You don't want people to go away from you because they might not come back. Or they might forget to come back, or what have you. So I really tend not to link unless there's some really compelling reason to do so. And I mean, maybe it's a video I couldn't actually reproduce myself that is fabulous, or something like that. But I tend not to link off the site. I don't consider that thievery, because I really do give credit to not only to the medium that's publishing it, but also to the reporters who wrote the story that's on that medium. So I make sure that people really get credit for what they've written about, what they care about. Karen, you have a question about writers publicizing their Substacks.
Yeah.
You there, Karen?
Yes. I kind of wrote the whole thing out, but yeah, I feel a lot of writers, and unfortunately it's some of the most famous writers in the business who've gotten out of mainstream journalism, and they post things on social media. Hey, the mainstream media isn't doing their job, or the legacy media is failing. Come to my Substack. And I think, it's sort of it's a punch in the face to people who are still working very hard. Many of them. The media is obviously not one thing, and I feel like if we can't defend each other, no one else is going to do it. We should know better. But that brings me to the bigger issue. What are some good ways people can promote their Substack without bashing other people in the profession who are probably not big famous journalists like them, who are just trying to do their jobs every day? I don't know if anyone's noticed this trend, but I think it's kind of appalling in light of journalism being under attack in general anyway. There's all different kinds of journalists. So can Substackers find a way to promote their Substack without bashing the mainstream?
Claire, you're the media commentator. What do you think?
Well, I would say it's a very good marketing tool and a good marketing message. And I think the reality is, people are moving away from traditional media, and they are getting their news from Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and the Midas Touch. And, my email inbox just now, I'm looking at, 3 or 4 Substacks coming in as we're speaking. I hear your point. Your point is, we should support I don't want to say legacy media. It sounds like a disparaging thing to say, but the reality is, what we saw in the last election is even, Kamala spending all that time talking about Brat Summer and working on her meme game. And, people are turning away from news, traditional sources of news, for whatever reason. And, Substack is the place where people are going, that and YouTube predominantly. So yeah, I mean, Jim Acosta is a good reason to bash the media. CNN decided to move his successful show to midnight, and so he quit. And so, you would ask if CNN did that to avoid trouble with Trump. I don't know. They seem like they're making a lot of trouble with Caitlin Collins right now in the White House. But, we do have this conflict where we have CBS News and 60 Minutes that are under the spotlight, but at the same time, their new owner, or their potential new owner, and Paramount, who is selling them, is in mediation with the president. There will be a number that they will pay to the president sooner or later, and that compromises the journalism. And so I think people see that, and they say, I want to go somewhere and read independent journalism in a place where, Elon Musk doesn't have his thumb on the scale, or, a Washington Post under Jeff Bezos, who, is donating money to Trump. I think there are really good, valid reasons why people are saying we don't we're shunning this. We want to find our news elsewhere. And that's scary.
I do feel for the people who are still in mainstream media organizations, and I think everything that Claire said is right. But I think we could support the reporting that people do at CNN or the New York Times or whatever media outlet we are following and commenting on. But we can support the working journalists without necessarily endorsing what their bosses are doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Before we go into the next question, I want to thank Sheila McCormick, who I believe is on here and who has just subscribed to my Substack page. So thank you very much, Sheila. I saw you coming in earlier. I want to give a shout out to my supporters if I can. Okay. Barbara Whitaker, you want to talk about pay? You there, Barbara?
Hi, I didn't know you were going to call me up. Yeah, I have so much information that I want to put out there, but I also need to get paid because I've been doing this research for a really long time and I need to get paid for it. So I need to know sort of, how do you monetize your Substack so that you're getting paid? I mean, I guess subscriptions are one way. Are advertising and sponsors allowed on Substack?
Claire, do you know about advertising? I actually had questions about advertising.
Yes, advertising is allowed. I think Substack says that they don't want to sell, they don't want to sponsor, they don't want to sell Substacks, but individual Substackers do that. What I think needs to happen in the next stage of the company's evolution is that there's aggregation so that we can all survive. The money that I make is nowhere near a salary, but it's a good freelance income, I would say. And it's better than freelancing because there's no editor. I'm the only editor. But I do think it is a necessary, we need to figure out ways to make this pay. Otherwise, we're all just, in a circular kind of pyramid scheme where we're all promoting each other and nobody's getting paid. And we're all essentially, increasing the value of Substack as an entity. I hope.
Clear, we're not actually, unless we get paid, they don't get paid because they get, all they get is like of our paid subscribers. Yeah. So,
but they have a valuation and their valuation is increasing.
Right.
So yes,
is it all by subscription then, or can you get sponsors on your site?
You can get sponsors. Yes, you have to find people that can find them for you. And I think that is kind of the element that's missing, but I think it's missing on purpose because probably
I have to tell you what,
an environment that is ad free.
When I was at World Policy Journal, we really did not want to do advertising. I finally persuaded the board of directors of the World Policy Institute that we needed to have some revenue coming in so they didn't have to pay the whole thing out of their pocket. So we hired an advertising guy, but it was very circumscribed what you could have. We mainly went after book publishers and universities and that sort of thing. I guess I could do that on my Substack. It's just a question of whether it's even worth my effort to do that because it would take away from other stuff I'm doing. I'm working 2 other books and whatever. Well, hopefully, maybe it makes a little bit of money. So, that's it. Richard, have you thought about advertising on your site?
Yeah, I sort of think it's an avenue to explore, and there's a Substack competitor, Beehive, which has been much more aggressive about helping to find advertising for writers. So, people could look into that. But I think the subscription model has a lot of advantages over advertising in general, if you can build an audience.
Yeah, it's a question of building an audience. So you say, for instance, all right, I have 5,650 or whatever subscribers. That's a bit of an audience. It's everywhere, but the question is how many people will really think that that's useful to them. I don't know. I think maybe you have to get above 10,000, maybe 20,000 before people really even advertise it. Even book publishers will start to have a look. Teresa Brain, you have a bunch of questions, you said.
Yeah,
You
hi.
did? You are?
Yeah, I'm at a so-called legacy media thing. And so I worry about the cadence, how to determine cadence. And I also am wonder if you have any thoughts on starting a Substack while you're still working full-time as a journalist, because to be nonpartisan, I don't have like blazing radical opinions, but it could, kind of look like there was less objectivity. And I'm curious again about how long it took to start earning money, and how does one, and yeah, a lot of things you talked about are things I've been struggling with the idea of doing it. The vulnerability of no institutional protection, and how to figure out how much frequency. I'm kind of like, I don't want to be my own publishing empire. And what if I think I'm going to do it once a week, but then I only have energy for once a month? That's not consistent. So
Once a month is tough. I think you won't build much of a following once a month. In my
Right.
opinion. Well,
For
I
me,
do
if
one. I do
Oh,
once.
sure.
Very interesting, because I generally do once a week. Sometimes I'll do another feature in the middle of the week. I'm about to put out one of my. I've done 7 or 12 episodes of my memoirs that I'm working on. So that's kind of fun. I do that mainly to amuse myself more than anything else. What I find is on that weekly one that I do on the world this week, I get an average of 6 disables. And by the way, the Substack calls it disabled. And that really upsets me, because someone has actually decided they're going to disable me. And yeah, I don't know why they chose that word, but oh man, so I see it, and I write back to almost every disabled, and occasionally I'll actually get them to reverse themselves, because I throw myself on them and I say, I'm devastated. I'm devastated, Teresa. You've disabled me. How could you do this? I'm such a great guy. Here's my bio and whatever. Oh, and I've worked so hard on this all. So sometimes I'll actually get, I'm shameless. And that's for a free person. I have not yet had I've had 1 or 2 monthlies drop off. Okay, paid, but I've never had, all of my annuals have continued to re-up. Cadence, as I say, once or twice a week. I think we all agree on that. I don't know. So that's, any other thoughts from this for
David,
Yeah.
can I weigh in? Oh, I'm sorry, Richard, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Claire.
I was just going to say, launch it. Just do it and try it and see what happens. And the only way you learn is by, getting your feet wet, trying it out. There's nothing that would stop you promoting the things that you're doing in your current job, and just trying to get a wider audience for the stuff that you're involved in. I don't know if you're a writer or an editor, but use that to get yourself lifted off. I started a travel Substack before I launched the Media Mix, just to, try out the technology, share it with my friends, see how I posted things without making myself look dumb. And that was a good trial run. But I would suggest that a Substack is for everybody. And I don't think that anyone should be shy about launching it. It should be thought of as social media. It should be thought of as an additional platform and distribution for whatever it is you're doing, even if it's, your professional life.
Yeah, what's really sad is anyway, it's really it's just a wonderful platform. So John Jacobs came back in, wants to say, what's the difference between followers and subscribers? I have about 1,500 more followers than I do subscribers. A follower is just someone who's, wants to look at your notes when you publish them, and they're not really subscribers. I try to embarrass them and say, look, why don't you subscribe to me? You can read everything I do, not these little snippets, And so a lot of people do. I wasn't doing that for a long time. I suspect I have legacy followers. A lot of the subscribers, followers I send subscription things for, they agree and they subscribe, but not everybody. Not a lot of people. A lot of people just don't want all the stuff in their inbox, and I understand that. Good amount to charge for a subscription. I charge $6 a month. I figure I get about $5 after everything is taken out, or $60 a year, which is 2 months free. Claire, and Richard, I don't know. What are you charging now? I forget.
So I think I'm 80. I think I'm 80.
You're at 8 and 80?
Yeah. It's worth letting people know that there's a cut that Substack takes, and there's also a cut that Stripe takes to process the fees. And so you're going to lose a little bit. And that's worth remembering. And then there's also, how do I declare this on my taxes? That was something that I was up against this month. What is my tax situation here? I don't know.
Okay, now here's the deal. I think we've covered a lot of these important subjects. I thought it might be useful if we go to and I hope Claire and Rich will stay around and throw in some ideas of as we go through my creation. I call it the creation PowerPoint, and because it'll tell people how I created a Substack from almost from scratch and how that worked. So that might be useful to some people. People kind of like, would they like that idea? Oh, all right. You don't have to say anything. I'll just do it. Hold on. Let's see. Slideshow. Okay. There we are. Can everybody hear it? See it, rather? Can everybody see it? Okay, someone shout out at me if you can see it, if you can't see it. Can you see it?
No,
I can't see it.
no.
You don't? Oh, uh-oh.
No.
Oh dear. That's not good then. Rob, can you help me? What am I doing wrong?
David, why don't you continue and I'll see if I can pull up your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay. So we're going to continue. Basically, I'll start talking about it a little bit, and then if Robert can do that, that would be great. Hold on a minute. Oh, hang on. Screen sharing now. Let's see.
Robert, thanks for
Yep.
coming to the rescue.
We can see it.
You can see it now? Okay, wait. I'm trying to get it bigger. Slideshow.
Robert,
Nope.
is there a way for David to make it bigger? It's very small from my viewpoint.
Yes,
I can't-
if you go to
Better?
slideshow, David, and then play from start.
Okay. Let's see, slideshow and
Play from
Play.
start all the way to the left.
okay, there we go. Everybody seeing it now?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, so creation, the theme. We talked about a lot of this. I'm going to rip through this. It should be concise, it should be compelling, and it should be different. So do some research before you do it. Research your competition. Research, consider sustainability. Remember, this is something that you're going to be doing every day, all the time. It's going to consume you. It's like when you're writing a book. My book agent once told me this. You have to love this subject so much you're going to be living it morning, noon, and night for 2 or 3 years while you're writing this book. In my case, it's sometimes more than that, but you're going to be living this all the time. So make sure it's something you really love. Find your niche, and are you moved by this niche? And it really, if you aren't moved by your subject, no one else is going to. So here was my debut was the French presidential elections in January of 2022, a quagmire in France, and that's how I started off. And I had, as you can see, the graphics on the right. That was very important to me because I thought this election was really going to stand and fall on the graphics. Oh, wait, I want to go back. Yeah, the frequency, the timing. Don't overwhelm your audience with too much. Don't do it 2 or 3 times a day unless you're really Jim Acosta or something and everybody's looking for you. But also don't let them forget you. So be sure also, if you choose a day of the week, and be sure to deliver and respect your deadline. My day of the week is Sunday. I deliver every Sunday, and mainly because there are a lot of elections also in different parts of the world that take place on Sunday. So I try to include the elections in every of my Substacks now, and that's very important. Time of day is important. Some people like early in the morning. I like early in the morning too, but I usually don't get to do that because on Sunday, again, you generally don't get results from Europe or Asia on elections until pretty late in the day, even in New York. So anyway. And your bio, sell yourself. This is your one chance to shine. Sell who you are, why you're doing it, why you're the person, what's truly unique about yourself, what distinguishes you from every other voice. And increasingly, there are more and more of them on the internet. Again, don't okay. Be sure to deliver, respect deadlines. Okay, time of day, I did that already. Okay, so this was my launch page, my first time. And it welcomes you. The welcome page is very important because people are going to see this when they subscribe to you. And it tells you why it welcomes you to Substack, and then tells me why you should be interested in myself and Andelman Unleashed, and who you are and what your background has been. That page is very important. Okay, and the design of your page. I originally just had a list, and then I said, I think I can do better than that. And Substack was just at that point, this was fairly early on, they were giving you options of different kinds of layout. And this is the layout I chose for mine, so that you have the big one in the middle. That's the one from that day, today. It says episode 58. It shows how long ago. This past weekend was episode 138. And then all of the other little features. This is the first vision of your vision. This is what people are going to see when they look at the page and they say, should I subscribe to this? It should be compelling and show off all that you can and do offer. I don't like plain lists, long stretches of text. We'll talk about that some more. We did talk about that already. As you design the logo, it'll be at the top of every email, every text, and then design your page. Make it pop. Lots of photos, charts, graphs, one lead photo or image. And I spend a lot of time choosing that lead image. It's not necessarily even one that is in the Substack that day. Or sometimes it'll be a cartoon from the end that most people can't see, but I'll let my free subscribers see at least that one. So that's very important, I think. I love the idea of experimenting with video and audio. I found sometimes that I can hold my my iPhone up to the page, and I can tape a video off of the screen, and I can put that on Substack, and that people seem to enjoy that. So that's that. Building an audience. Where do you start? That's the most important thing right now. I started with friends and family. My first audience was myself and Pamela, my wife, who's in the other room now. She's also my editor, incidentally. Then you have to move beyond friends and family. One thing I have done and this is a little tip, I have done this for the past 25, 30 years. I have built an e-Rolodex. It's now up to something like 27,000 emails I have. I keep it, I actually archive it on Benchmark. People can use Constant Contact. I like Benchmark. I think they're much more flexible in terms of allowing you what you want to send out. And every now and then I'll send out a blast to everybody. But I'm very, very careful about not overwhelming people on that. So they identify myself as spam. Use all kinds of social and unsocial media to present yourself. Look, if you're bringing a Jim Acosta style size audience with yourself, that's great. But there aren't many people who can do that. And I found even when I used to go on occasionally on CNN television, and they would put my identifier at the bottom. I'd get like 3 or 4 subscribers. That's it. That's it. So unless you're on it's reach and frequency, remember. So unless you're, excuse me, unless you really do have a tremendous following elsewhere, you're going to have to put yourself in it everywhere. Write up your idea with a hyperlink. Guest wherever you can on any other person's podcast, and eventually that people begin to notice you, and that's what you want. You want to be noticed. I love notes. We talked about that. Recommend and endorse other Substackers. What to do about unsubscribed and disabled? You got to be thick-skinned. And again, I write to as many as I can. What would win them back? Now, this is the key issue and the biggest conundrum. Unpaid will help you build a list, unless you can launch with a big list, of course. Paid will get you money, but it might drive away potential audiences. So I told you about how I started with 1,000, then I went to 2,000 and 3,000, build in lures, and what can you offer to keep your paid audience, to attract and especially retain them? Because especially if you have monthly people, they can drop off. Even an annual can drop off at the end of the year and not necessarily renew. Also, figure out something that I have well, everybody has a special category, kind of like a founder's category. Mine is $200. People I know who really seem to like me, they understand the need to give me some extra revenue to really help me subscribe to media around the world, some of which are very expensive. And so they help me out that way. The lures, these are my lures. These are some of the things that I offer online. And let's see. Yes. So, and I say to everybody, I'm always delighted to chat and schmooze. I have my email address I give to a lot of people. And there's always Andelman Unleashed, spread the word. And that's what I would ask all of you to do. Spread the word about me, about Rich Galant, and about Claire. Claire, did you dropped off? Oh dear. Anyway, so that's where we are. I'm going to stop the share and go back and see if there are any other people with questions. Oh, 10 new messages. All right. Oh, one slide. Sorry, Maria. Which slide did you want to ask me about? Are you on there, Maria, still? Maria? No? Okay.
Okay, it looks
Uh,
like they want you to go back to slide 1.
no, I think
No,
go
it says
back
she missed the
slide.
paid info.
Oh,
Oh, the paid info. Well, wait. I missed the paid. Okay. Okay, Edie, I don't understand what the Substack video platform native. What is native? Rich, do you know what native is on
Yeah,
paid?
it is native. You can import video and audio, but you can also you can shoot the video on Substack.
Oh, wow. And this is really new, right?
Yeah.
It is, but I have not done that yet. I like to be very controlled on what I use as video. For instance, one of the things I do is I tape my Unleashed conversation every week, and I use that I have my 1 p.m. on Friday for my paid, and I put it on the paid section below because sometimes I might get only 10 or 12 people in our conversation, but I have over 80 subscribers, so I want them to be able to see it. So I'll take that in a Zoom, and I'll create a link, and you can immediately plug that into Substack, and you can upload it. You can then also create an actual video yourself. I have not done that yet. One of these days I may try and do that, but so anyway, there we are. Let's see. Okay. Am I missing anybody? Anybody else have a question out there that I'm missing? Let's see, Maria, I didn't know what. Okay. All right. I think, are we all set? Anybody else have any questions? This is your last chance before I thank everybody. My suggestion is simply go out there and create something. It's going to be increasingly difficult to cut through the clutter. So I have 2 new messages. Let's see what we have down here.
David, did you answer? Apologies if you did, from S. Smith in Canada, no less. We have to be very nice to them. What does David mean by write and ID yourself with a hyperlink?
Oh, yes. ID yourself with a hyperlink to get yourself to like at the bottom of my signature page, my signature on my Substack, on my email. Sorry, I have a link to my Substack, so I'll put Andelman Unleashed and then a hyperlink to that. Hyperlink means you know what a hyperlink is, don't you? Or don't
Yeah,
you?
you link to your website, right? Or you link, where are you linking to?
No, to my Substack page.
Okay,
Uh,
very good.
You can find it, and they can sign up there.
We have
pretty-
one more question, which is important, from Stephen Handelman. You sort of began to touch on it. Are you concerned about legal protection? Do you, and I would add to that, do you have your own insurance policy for libel?
If anybody wants to sue me, I think it's actually great. You know, think of all the publicity I'll get. Political
That's
right,
spoken like a true newsman.
political right about me. You know,
Richard, what about you?
Yeah, I would urge people to look into getting insurance if you're going to write about anything super controversial. But if you're going to write about collecting stamps or blogging about food or whatever, travel and so on, you may not need it. But you should. I think you should at least talk to somebody about the possibility.
but
Look,
see,
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna have to chime in on this. And this is discussed much in a number of my writers' groups. I do believe that in this environment with very active libel suits, if you are discussing any particular persons, I would make sure that your home insurance, if you own a home, has a libel protection in it, and if not, to get it, it's available through various journalistic groups. Not easy to get.
see, I hope that, you know, I write sometimes a lot about Trump because of how the world is looking at him, and sometimes it's a little bit insulting, probably, to Trump. And so I'm kind of hoping that the Justice Department will come after me in some fashion. And in fact, gosh, please, you know, but with 5,600 subscribers, do they really care? And most of them frankly, I suspect a lot, even not even in the United States, so they can't vote. Right. If I can get up to 100,000 subscribers and 50,000 are in the US, maybe I'd look into some kind of a LIBO insurance, but I think it's pretty expensive.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Wait, someone said, John Jacobs said he looked at getting insurance and drew a blank.
Meaning, John, you drew a blank because there wasn't any.
Well, we at the Solarians, we finally got D&O insurance, directors and officers insurance for the board. I don't know if Deadline has that for the Board of Governors. Do you know, Jessica? I don't know.
I do not know, and it's actually been an issue that has come up, and I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
Insurance, we live in an increasingly litigious world in which getting these particular kinds of policies is
Rich?
very concerning. And by the way, just for everyone out there, journalistic organizations, big media companies increasingly force you to sign a contract that warranties them, but they don't warranty you. So those of us who have done independent investigative work have to really, really think about that. Let me add one more question that's very important that I see here. Someone is asking about getting the recording. That would be a question that would go for Robert if he is available. I know he's hard at work running the tech, but I know.
Yes, Jessica, it's being recorded, and after minor editing, it'll be available on the Deadline Club YouTube page, probably.
Okay, and we can include an email about that in our next emailing when it's available.
I want to make sure that everybody subscribes to Rich's Substack. It is wonderful about history. It's fascinating. I look at it every time I read the whole thing, and he does not overwhelm me, and that's very good.
Richard, can I ask a question?
Sure. And thank you, David. That's very, very kind of you.
I am a brand new subscriber of the Rest is History podcast, which I adore, and I haven't known about your Substack. So could you just tell us a little highlight? I know you've mentioned a few things to entice this audience to subscribe.
Yeah, I do deep dives into history, and I try to shed light on what's happening now by looking at what happened 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 500 years ago, and I find it mentally kind of calming to see that the world survived this kind of turmoil before. So I would recommend people take a look at it and give it a shot, and let me know what you think. I really rely on reader feedback.
Rich was very good when he was running CNN Opinion to when I tended to sometimes go a little bit overboard on the historical part of context of some of the things I was writing about, but he let me put it in. So that bravo, Rich, thank you. Occasionally he'd have some cavils about it but it was good.
You're reporting, Richard, you're reporting about Andrew Jackson, and that whole episode is extremely important. Maybe you have done Teapot Dome and other eras of ridiculous scandal in American history so that we don't feel so forlorn.
And Watergate, of course.
I love it because Richard Galant, you had me at Andrew Jackson's treatment of indigenous people. As you can see, we have fun here at Deadline Club, and we have fun on Substack.
And we are always thrilled to have new members and people who want to get involved. David is a new member on the board. And look at this, lickety split. He's doing a webinar. You can too. You have great ideas. Even if you're not on the board, you come to us with your ideas. We are very, very open. David, should we be wrapping it up maybe?
Yes, we should. And I want to thank everybody, Robert especially, and Rich and Claire, who I think I think she ran out of juice on her cell phone. She's at the New York Public Library rather than in Nice, France, where she should have been. Thank you, Claire. Her media mix is just terrific, by the way, also. And Robert, thank you very much for a stellar job putting this all together, assembling it. Something I could never have done at my age. And my ability to handle complex technological issues. So thank you. And
thank you, David.
On a final note, I think that we should all applaud David and Richard. If everyone wants to unmute themselves and start the applause for this, because David, you do better than any 70-year-old. You're killing it, or even a 60-year-old. So thank you to such a brilliant, well-run, informative panel.
This was really great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Barbara.
very informative and interesting.
Yeah,
You're
I'll
very-
Thank you all.
dip my toe in and get a sense of what it's about, and this was very helpful. Thanks.
And when you launch a Substack, you let us know about it, okay? And we'll reinforce it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Okay.
much.
David,
Thanks,
take
everybody.
us away.
Okay. So long. Sayonara. Oh, by the way, next month in France. So when you hear me next time, it'll be from France. So there we are.
Can we come?
I'm so jealous.
Pack your bags.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, wonderful speakers. Richard, I'm going to dive in right now. Thank
Thank
you, Robert. Robert, for what a great show.
I want to say one final thing about Rich. Rich actually let me write a piece that was one of the most, I think, one of the most viewed pieces on and had legs on CNN Opinion. Was I wrote it over a year ago. If Trump is elected, I may actually move to France. And I explained why all of this happened. And CNN that next night had me on television to talk about this. And the entire panel, other than me, was hostile to this idea that I was abandoning America and so on. So now I'd love to be able to go back and ask them, do they still feel that way?
Well, who were these other people?
Okay. One of them was CNN anchor, who I think may not even be an anchor there anymore, but there we are.
Well,
All right.
all right,
Thank you.
everybody.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Great to see all friends in the audience. See you soon.